Welcome back to Transformation Talks. If you're a regular listener, you know exactly what we do here.
We take a whole stack of material and basically strip it down to the studs.
Exactly. We are looking for those real, actionable nuggets of insight that actually change how you operate on a Monday morning. This is our After the Amen deep dive.
Right, because hearing a message is one thing, but the application is where the actual transformation happens.
You hit the nail on the head. And today we are diving into a really specific service from Transformation Ministries VB.
Yes, the sermon delivered by their own pastor, Jeffrey West, on February 22nd, 2026.
Right. And we also have this incredible opening segment, a special Black History moment presented by evangelist Teresa Watson. And I just have to say, looking at the source material for this deep dive, it is incredibly eclectic.
Eclectic is a very polite way of putting it. It is a fascinating collision of worlds, honestly.
It really is. I mean, on one side of the ring, you have this high-end luxury fashion world. We're talking Polo Ralph Lauren, corporate ladders, runway models.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of the ring, you have an ancient, dusty valley of dry bones from the Old Testament book of Ezekiel.
It sounds like a total mismatch, right? You generally do not see Ralph Lauren and the prophet Ezekiel in the same room.
No, you definitely do not.
But when you actually look closely at what evangelist Teresa Watson presented in that Black History moment and then compare it to what Pastor West preached, they're actually telling two halves of the exact same story.
And that story is fundamentally about hope and restoration.
Restoration, yes. But even more specifically, it's about resilience. It's about the structural mechanics of hope.
The structural mechanics of hope.
Yeah. How do you look at a situation, whether it's a career path where you are a total outsider or a life situation that looks completely dead, and see an army instead of a graveyard?
I really like that phrase. We are definitely going to come back to the structural mechanics, but let's start with the first half of that equation. Because before we get to the heavy theology, we have to talk about the fashion.
We really do.
Because Evangelist Watson kicked off the service with a Black History moment that wasn't just some standard history lesson. It was basically a Harvard Business School case study.
It absolutely was.
Yeah.
She focused on the man named James M. Jeter. And for anyone interested in the intersection of culture and corporate strategy and, honestly, just pure grit, this is a name you need to know.
So break it down for us. Who is James Jeter?
So, as of August 2024, James Jeter became the creative director for men's polo at Ralph Lauren. And to put that in perspective, he is the first Black person to hold that title in the brand's entire 57-year history.
Which is massive. I mean, Ralph Lauren isn't just a clothing brand. It is the literal aesthetic of traditional Americana. It's the country club, the yacht, the Ivy League.
Exactly. It's a very specific, very guarded world. And that's why his ascent is so significant. But the insight here, the real takeaway for you listening, isn't just that he got the big job. Is how he got the job.
Right.
He didn't just parachute in from another European luxury house. He didn't start as a VP with some fancy MBA.
It's chart on the floor.
He was a 16-year-old part-time salesperson. He was literally folding the shirts.
That is the classic started from the bottom narrative, but I feel like we often gloss over what that actually entails. We see the headline creative director, and we totally forget the years of internships and retail hours.
Correct. And that is the exact point Evangelist Watson was driving at. Jeter is a graduate of Morehouse College, a historic HBCU. He didn't just assimilate into the Ralph Lauren brand. He brought his background to the brand.
Oh, yeah. He was instrumental in the Morehouse and Spelman College collection for Ralph Lauren, which was a huge moment for HBCU visibility in luxury spaces.
It was. And that brings us to the theological application Watson made. She quoted Psalm 75, which says, "Promotion cometh neither from the east, nor from the west, nor from the south, but God is the judge."
See, that is interesting because on one hand, we're talking about grinding, right? Internships, sales floors, years of hard work. But then she's saying promotion comes from God. How do those two ideas actually sit together?
That's the tension she navigates so perfectly. The argument isn't that you sit back on your couch and wait for God to magically make you a director.
Right.
The argument is that your preparation is the vessel, but God provides the elevation. She drew really strong parallels to biblical figures like David and Joseph.
Joseph is a perfect example of that. He was effectively an administrator in Potiphar's house, basically an intern before he was running all of Egypt.
Exactly. He was faithful in the small administrative tasks. The takeaway here is that excellence in the small things, like folding the shirts correctly at 16 or just showing up on time for the internship, is actually a form of worship.
Wow.
It's the prerequisite for the big thing. Your current low-level position isn't a holding pattern, it's the training ground.
Speaking of training grounds, we have to talk about how she illustrated this, because she didn't just put a picture of James Jeter on a screen and read a bio. She turned the church sanctuary into a literal runway.
It was a brilliant move for community engagement. It took the concept of Black excellence and made it tangible for everyone in the room.
It was hilarious and genuinely cool because she owns an optical business, right? So she brought out these actual polo frames, and who does she get to model them? Not professional models.
No, she calls up the church leadership.
You had Danny Watson coming out first,
Yeah.
and Evangelist Watson is on the mic acting like a fashion commentator at Paris Fashion Week. She's describing the Polo 2123 with the gold emblem and the spring-loaded temples.
Good for a long, narrow face, I believe she noted.
Yes, she did. And then you have Jeff West modeling the shiny black gunmetal frames, the Polo 1242 and the matte finish 1244s. And finally, Pastor Jeffrey West himself struts out in the Polo 1241s with the navy suede.
What strikes me about this segment, aside from just the sheer entertainment value, is how it completely breaks down the sacred-secular divide.
How so?
Well, often in religious contexts, worldly success like fashion, luxury, corporate titles is viewed with a bit of suspicion, like it's a distraction. But here they are, actively celebrating it. They're cheering for their pastor, looking good in designer frames.
It reinforces the message that you can be a person of faith and also absolutely crush it in the marketplace.
Right. It grounds the success of James Jeter in their own reality. It essentially says, we are wearing the excellence he helped create.
It sets a really high-energy, celebratory tone, which honestly was necessary because the sermon that followed went in a completely different, much heavier direction.
Very sharp pivot.
We go from the runway straight to the graveyard. Pastor West steps up, and his sermon topic is beauty for ashes. Now, I know this is part of a broader series on Isaiah 61, but he spent almost the entire time in Ezekiel 37.
The Valley of Dry Bones. It's one of the most famous and, frankly, one of the creepiest visions in the Old Testament.
Before we get to the bones, though, let's define terms. He spent a lot of time on this word ashes, and I think his definition is going to surprise some people.
That's crucial. In our modern mindset, ashes are just waste. They're dirt. You sweep them up and throw them out. But Pastor West reframes this entirely. He says ashes are what is left after the fire.
Meaning they are proof of survival.
Precisely. If you have ashes, it means you didn't burn up.
Right.
You endured the fire. So ashes represent testimony. They represent history.
That is a massive mental shift. Instead of being ashamed of the burnt parts of your life, you view them as evidence that you are still standing.
And he connects that condition, that burnt-out feeling, to the dry bones in Ezekiel. Historically, in the text, these bones represented the house of Israel in exile. They were defeated, scattered, and hopeless. But Pastor West makes it deeply personal for the listener.
He used some visceral language here. He talked about situations being bleached and parched.
Bleached implies they have been out in the sun for a long time. This isn't a fresh wound. This is a dead situation that you have entirely gotten used to.
He asked a question that I think probably made a few people in the room squirm. He asked, how long have you been pacifying something? Just doing enough to get by?
That's the real trap of the dry valley. You stop trying to fix it and just start managing the decay. You pacify the dead job or the dead relationship. You just cope.
Now, before he explains how to get out of that valley, he took a detour that I found fascinating. It was a solid 5 minutes on parenting.
Ah, yes. The soft parenting versus the rod of correction segment.
He didn't hold back at all. He basically said I was a terrible little fella and credited strict discipline with saving his life.
This gives us a really clear window into his worldview, and it actually serves the theological point. He contrasts modern soft parenting, which he views as permissive, with the way he was raised. But he makes a critical distinction. He differentiates between abuse and correction.
Right. He says abuse is misuse, but correction is edification. It is building you up.
And the reason he brings this up isn't just to give parenting advice. He is setting the stage for why Israel was in the valley to begin with. The dry bones weren't an accident. They were a result of divine correction. Israel had strayed, and the exile was the time out, so to speak.
So if the dryness is a form of correction, it means there is an actual purpose to it.
Exactly. And if God puts you there for correction, God can bring you out for restoration. It shifts the entire narrative from, I am a victim of bad luck, to, I am in a season of preparation, which ties right back to the James Jeter story we started with.
Okay, so we are in the valley. It is dry. It is bleached. And God asks Ezekiel the big question, Son of man, can these bones live?
And Ezekiel gives the smartest consulting answer in history, Lord, thou knowest.
Which translates to, I have no idea, but You do.
It's an admission of limited perspective. If you look at your dead situation with human eyes, logic, spreadsheets, past performance, the answer is no, it is over. But by saying, Lord, thou knowest, Ezekiel opens the door for a variable he just can't see.
And this is where we get into those mechanics we talked about earlier, because God doesn't just snap his fingers and fix it. He gives Ezekiel a job. He tells him to speak to the bones.
This is the shift from passive waiting to active participation. Pastor West breaks this miracle down into stages, and this is really the core actionable advice of the deep dive.
Walk us through the stages.
First, there is hearing. The bones have to hear the word. Pastor West points out that you have to treat the problem as if it actually has ears.
Then comes the noise and the shaking.
This is a great detail. Restoration is rarely quiet, and it is rarely neat. When things start to shift, it rattles, it shakes. You have to be prepared for the disruption that comes with change.
And then we get structure. The bones come together bone to bone. Sinews and flesh cover them.
This is alignment. This is getting your resume updated. This is writing the business plan. This is going to therapy. It's building the vessel. And this is the most critical insight in the sermon. Structure is not life.
He used the analogy of the battery-operated toy here, which I thought was perfect.
Right, you can have the toy, it looks perfect, the plastic is shiny, all the gears are in place, but if you don't have the batteries, it is just a statue. In the vision, Ezekiel sees these reformed bodies, but the text says there was no breath in them.
That is a haunting image, honestly. You can have the appearance of a life, the job, the house, the car, the perfectly curated social media feed, but still be completely dead inside.
That is exactly the state he's describing. You could be functional, but lifeless. And that brings us to the missing ingredient, the ruach.
He went deep into the Hebrew here, ruach.
Yes. In Hebrew, the word captures three meanings simultaneously: breath, wind, and spirit. It is the animating force.
Pastor West shared a personal story about the wind aspect. He said a storm came up that very morning and blew the patio furniture completely across his deck.
The point he was making is that wind is invisible. You cannot see the wind itself. You only see the evidence of the wind. You see the chair moving. You see the trees bending.
So in our lives, we might not see God working, but we see the movement.
Exactly. We see the change. We see the serendipity. We see the door opening. That is the ruach. The formula for resilience he's proposing is speak the word plus build the structure plus invite the spirit equals life. You need all three.
Now, talking about the spirit component, Pastor West knows that for a modern listener, this can sound a bit abstract, or maybe just metaphorical. So he drops a couple of personal testimonies that are frankly hard to process if you are purely a materialist.
He challenges the listener's skepticism head on. He basically says, I know this sounds crazy, but let me tell you what I've actually seen.
We have to talk about the leg story.
We do. It is the emotional climax of the sermon.
So Pastor West talks about being hit by a truck years ago. He was in a full body cast. Apparently, one of his legs had stopped growing or was stunted because of the severity of the break. The doctors actually wanted to surgically break his good leg to match the length of the bad one.
Which sounds like an absolute nightmare scenario. I can't even imagine hearing that news.
Absolutely. He says he didn't even know God like that at the time, but a deacon came into his hospital room while he was asleep and prayed for him. And he claims that overnight, the leg grew. When they measured him for the surgery, the legs matched. No surgery needed.
And he doubles down on this. He tells a second story about a child in a wheelchair at a church in Virginia. He describes seeing a deformed leg grow almost a foot in real time during a service.
He admitted that people actually left the church because of it. They got up and walked out saying, "That's not real. That's a trick."
It touches on the tension between logic and miracles. For Pastor West, the dry bones story isn't just a metaphor. He is saying, I have seen the impossible happen to physical bone. So when he asks you to believe that your career or your marriage can be resurrected, he is speaking from a place of absolute conviction.
So how do you apply this? We've got the structure, we've got the stories. What are you supposed to do right now?
The core instruction Pastor West gives is prophesy to yourself.
What does that look like practically? Because prophesy is a pretty big religious word.
It basically means taking agency over your narrative. He says it is not enough to just complain about the valley. You have to actually speak to it. He gives examples like, I am the head and not the tail, or I am the lender, not the borrower.
It sounds like affirmations, but with a real theological weight behind them.
It's similar, but the source is different. You aren't just manifesting your own desires. You are aligning your reality with what you believe God says about you. He points out that your bones, your deep subconscious, your situation, are actually hearing you. If you walk around saying, I'm broke, I'm tired, I'll never get that promotion, Your bones are obeying that command. They are staying dry.
He actually stopped the service and made everyone do this. He told them to put their heads down and speak to their own dry bones right then and there.
It creates a moment of genuine authority. You stop being the victim of the valley and start being the prophet of your own future. You are calling for the wind.
This really brings the whole deep dive full circle. If we look at James Jeter, that wasn't an accident. That was a young man who likely had to speak a lot of belief into himself while he was folding shirts at 16, just waiting for a door to open.
Absolutely. He built the structure,
Yeah.
the education, the internship, the work ethic. And when the wind blew the opportunity, he was ready to stand up like that great army in Ezekiel.
It is a powerful reminder that dead doesn't have to be the final status.
Hope is structural. That is the phrase I keep coming back to. You have to build the bones, speak the word, and trust the wind.
So here's my question for you listening right now. We all have that one area. Maybe it isn't a dramatic valley of bones. Maybe it's just a dusty closet in the back of your mind, a dream you gave up on a relationship you've settled for. What is the dry bones situation in your life that you have been pacifying?
That is the uncomfortable question. What are you
Uh-huh.
just coping with because you are afraid to speak to it?
Something to chew on as you go through your week. Stop pacifying it. Speak to it.
Absolutely.
We want to thank you for diving deep with us today on this special Transformation Talks breakdown. If this analysis helped you see your own dry bones a little differently, or if you just appreciated the connection between Ralph Lauren and the Bible, please make sure to like and subscribe.
And if you want to experience this energy firsthand and maybe see those polo glasses in person, Pastor West and the team invite you to join the community live. You can catch them on the Transformation Ministries VB YouTube channel or Facebook page.
That is every Sunday at 10 a.m. And of course, if you missed the original sermon we just analyzed, you can watch replays of the whole sermon on the Transformation Ministries YouTube channel. It is definitely worth the watch.
Definitely.
Thanks for listening. Until next time, keep speaking to those bones.
Take care.